Hadesh Guruji.
This.
So we're here discussing a new project about Gorakhpa and the Gorakh Sabadi. And so as a means to introduce this to people who don't know who Gorakh is, it would be really great to hear, what he means to you as a Nath yogi. And also a bit controversial, but is Gorakhnath a Hindu or a Buddhist?
Well, that's a very interesting question, right? Because the question itself brings out some essence of Gorakhnath. Now, before I begin, okay, Gorakh, right? Gorakh, meaning a person who takes care of cows. So originally Gorakhnath, according to the Vajrayana Buddhist, is regarded as a coward, right? Because most of the Siddhas at that time, they were named after their profession, you see, mostly. So that's why we have Gorakh. And then in the last video, I talked about why Gorakhpa, right?
That's the next video.
Yes, the next video, why Gorakhpa, right? So here I would like to say that because I don't want to be biased about what I'm speaking about, but here I'm just bringing about a relationship, a comparison, right, between Gorakhnath and Gorakhpa. Because Gorakhnath, or Gorakh, is honored, venerated, respected, worshipped, right, by the two great traditions. Right? That is the Vajrayana tradition in Buddhism, and then the Nath Sampradaya in the Hindu aspect, right? So here, both the traditions have honored Gorakhnath according to their own theology, according to their own principles of the theology and the philosophy behind that. So that is how they have defined Gorakh, right? That's why Gorakh, among the Vajrayanas, they know him as a Mahasiddha, right? One who has a pure consciousness and awakened awareness that he is an enlightened person, that he is a Buddha. This is how the Vajrayana look at Gorakh.
Right.
And that's why he is named as Gorakhpa, right?
And just in terms of time, we're looking at maybe 11th century medieval enlightened yogi.
Very
probably
true.
The most
very true.
famous.
Yes, very true. 9, 10, 11, 12th century, maybe the story, that is, the events happened. So it was the medieval time, right? And Gorakh was at that time, standing at a crossroad at that time, at a crossroad where there were many different ideas, many different schools had evolved.
Of yoga.
Of the practice, many different schools were there. And Gorakhnath was standing at the crossroad, right? Like the evolution of the Vajrayanas were there, right? And then the Sikhism was there, Guru Nanak's ideology, and then the Hindus had many of these ideologies developing at that time, like the Nath Sampradaya itself.
And kind of the tail end of Tantra.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
As
So
well. The
he
major
was,
religion.
yes.
Yeah.
And then what Gorakh's idea, what Gorakh preached, what he taught, was about pure consciousness, achieving pure consciousness, right? Which can be achieved by having an awakened awareness, right? And to have an awakened awareness, right, the person has to have total control over his mind. So this is what Gorakh was emphasizing on, right? And developing this through the
Right.
practice of Hatha Yoga.
So, what traditions does he come out of?
Does he come? Now, these are the two traditions that have honored Gorakh,
Yeah.
okay? So, Gorakh is the same one entity, one person, right? But they have been honored in different ways in these two traditions, right? And among the two traditions, I find that the Vajrayana tradition is much more older than the tradition of the Nath Sampradaya, because the Vajrayana Siddhas were all great tantric practitioners, right? And they achieved their siddhis through the practice of Vajrayana tantrics. So, according to that, I feel that Gorakhpa, right, is much more like the story is much more older than what the story is in the Nath Sampradaya, right? And the another thing about it is like Gorakh speaks about, the boat, yan, right? Boat, yan, a big ship. So Gorakh talks about a yan, right? And that is sahaj yan, sahaja. Now sahaja is like regarded as a place on the other side of the river, right? So you got to achieve sahaja, right?
Is the river samsara?
Yes, the river can be, imagined as a samsara. Now, the sahaj is there, and then to cross this samsara, this river, Gorakh has these boats, right, of tapas, of mudras, right, of yoga practices, of breath control, mind control, So these were the boats that Gorakh provided so that you could cross the river and be a Sahaja.
And attain moksha.
Yes, and attain moksha through it, So Gorakh's teaching was accepted by all different schools. Many schools, they accepted his teachings, right? There was nothing that they could not accept because Gorakh was absolutely talking about the truth.
Yeah, he was accomplished.
Right? So in this way, like we cannot attach Gorakh to any of these schools that were developing at that time actually, in reality. Right? But they have been attached to the Vajrayana group and the Nath Sampradaya group. Right? In Nath Sampradaya, Gorakh is regarded as an incarnation of Adinath, of Shiva himself. Right? Why? Because Gorakh was that Mahayogi who had attained this supreme wisdom. Right? He had attained this supreme power to understand the nature, right, of human beings, and to understand which path is the best. So Gorakh's path was simply Hatha Yoga and the practice, right, to realize the truth. So Gorakh in the Nath tradition is regarded as the avatar of Shiva, Shiva himself, because he had conquered death, and his calmness, right, was like that of Shiva. Right? His awareness was like that of Shiva. That's why he was.
And he was Shiva in human form, right?
Yes, and then he was they believe in the incarnation of Shiva, right? That is, in human form, that Gorakhnath was present as Shiva. Right? So that is the concept of the Nath Sampradaya, and that's how they honor Gorakhnath, right? According to this theology. And in the Vajrayana, if you look at the Vajrayana practices, and in Vajrayani also, there it is different, right? Why? Because in Vajrayana, the Buddhist theology, right, regards Gorakhpa as one of the 84 Mahasiddhas, the awakened one, the illuminated ones, right, the enlightened ones. So the Mahasiddhas were regarded as the enlightened, awakened beings with great yogic powers, right? So they were regarded as this. This is the Vajrayana thought, right? The principle, the theology, right? And here Gorakh is not regarded as Shiva. Gorakh is not regarded as an incarnation in the Vajrayana, right, practice. So here this is the only difference, right, we can see between this thing, right.
And so he also had the same guru,
Yes.
different names.
Yes. Again, then you see how, again, the Sampradayas have honored Minpa, right, that is Mashindranath. So in the Nath Sampradaya, we have Gorakh's guru as Mashindranath, another enlightened being, right? And Mashindranath had received all this wisdom and knowledge from Adinath, right? The knowledge of Hatha Yoga, right, and everything, which he transmitted to his chela, that is Gorakhnath. So that is how it is regarded in this Nath Sampradaya, right? But in Vajrayana, that's not there, because he is just regarded as one of the great Mahasiddha, one of the 84 Mahasiddhas of the Vajrayana lineage, right? So that is the comparison, right, here. So it's up to us whether you want to be the chela of Gorakhnath or you want to be the chela of Gorakhpa, right? It's your choice, right? Whichever way, the path is the same,
Right.
right? Because Gorakhnath's path is very much, it overlaps the teachings of the Buddhist teachings of the Vajrayanas, right? The mudras, the mahamudras, right? And all the practice of tapas.
Yeah, like Raja Yoga, Laya Yoga,
Yes.
Hatha Yoga,
Yes.
all of those
All this.
medieval forms of yoga
Yes,
merging
yes,
into his technique.
very true.
Right.
And then developing it so that everyone will become enlightened, right? That's what Gorakh always emphasized on this, right? And the most emphasis Gorakh would always give is on the mind, because the mind is so unstable, right? It is always in a state of motion, right? So the yogi's job is to control this mind, right? This movement of the mind, and settle the mind in its original source, that is right inside our body, right in the heart. How to calm the mind down, right? Only that way, only we will have awareness.
Yeah.
That means our awareness will start awakening, right? And that is the reason why the mind has to travel always, right? And most of the time, in people, the mind is traveling outward. It's always outward, most of the time. And people don't have that awareness that I will have to, divert this mind inward. Because this awareness is not there. Why? Because their mind is always going out, right? There are so many distractions today in this world, right? And the mind is easily distracted, and so the mind just flows into this outwardly objects, right? Which Gorakh was totally against of, right? Even Gorakh was against the rituals.
Yeah.
Because he said this is all outward. You are taking your mind outside and you're interested mostly in doing things that are outside, and you are not concentrating on taking that mind, which is so turbulent, so not flexible at all, right? Moving in all directions. Then how can you ever awaken your awareness? Unless and until you draw that mind to yourself, away from the attachments of this worldly, right, things that we have connection with. Unless we take it away and bring it inside our heart and keep it there, then only the mind will become silent. It will understand silence, right? So this is what Gorakhnath was always talking about.
Right.
Right? He was telling everyone to control the mind. And in Buddhism, the mind is, like in, what do you see this? Dzogchen practice. Right? In Dzogchen, the mind is described, as the clouds in the sky. And the sky is the stable awareness. The sky doesn't move, but the cloud are described as the mind, right? It keeps on moving, changing shapes in all direction in the sky. They are moving, right?
And beneath the clouds is the blue sky.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? So this is what it is.
I mean, it's interesting because Gorakhnath, what's similar between Vajrayana Buddhism and Nath Sampradaya is that
Very
they're
much.
both non-dual
Yes.
systems as well, right? They
Yes,
share
very
the
much.
same view. And also, I think Gorakhnath took the shunyata emptiness view from Buddhism.
Very much.
Yeah.
And Gorakhnath emphasizes on it, right? There. That's why he talks about Kali. He talks about Shiva. Shiva being the consciousness, and Kali being the void, the great void, the emptiness, right? And the union of Shiva and Kali, the consciousness, is enveloped.
Shiva and Shakti.
Yes, is enveloped
Compassion and emptiness.
by, yes,
Yeah.
right? Encompassed
Wisdom
by
and compassion.
emptiness, Kali. Right? Kali has trapped Shiva.
Yeah.
So this explanation about emptiness, all arising from the theology of Buddhism, right? Like the sky being so stable, and the clouds, the mind, moving like the clouds every time, right? So to control these clouds, to make them stable, that was the achievement of the mind. Unless and until we don't have control of our mind, we will never have awareness. To be aware, we got to look inside ourselves and control all that emotions, right? That mind is creating in our body, because the mind is going outside,
Yeah.
right? And the emotions are rising, because the emotions are all embedded in our muscles, in our organs, in our body. It's not somewhere else. That's why it's so easy to wake up any emotion, right? Any emotion, like a little bit of something that is not does not collaborate with you, some idea, then you become angry. And the anger comes so easily, you don't have to do tapas for it,
Yeah.
right?
So, this particular collection of sayings of Gorakhnath, the Gorakh Sabadi, there's aspect within it. They discuss specific techniques of Gorakhnath to control the mind,
Yes.
and we'll be looking at those in detail as we move through this text.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But for now, essentially, that's who Gorakhnath is as a medieval yogi, possibly alive around the 10th, 11th century.
Yes.
And who many people say, is one of the main influences on yoga in the modern world. Modern postural yoga, even in the Western world.
Very
He's had
true.
huge influence in so many
Yes,
aspects
everywhere.
of yoga.
Because he was the one to propagate this.
Yeah.
And then it has been given, this knowledge, he gave it away to everyone. Right? Use it and find the path.
Yeah.
Find who you are, yourself, that consciousness, realize that you are a conscious being, right? And be present as a conscious being, not just like an animal. Yes, we possess the body of an animal, right? And those animal emotions and instincts are there in our body, right? The cells, the DNA, right? They all hold this information inside us. The ancient information is also inside us still,
Yeah.
Like if I give you a small example about this, it's like, okay, a small example about this, like, mushrooms, right? Ferns. Now, mushrooms and ferns are very ancient plant.
Right.
And before the angiosperms developed, that means the flowering plants developed. And these were classed as non-flowering plants, right? And mushrooms and ferns are very ancient plants, And then at that time, our ancestors were eating those plants, right? And at that time, they had that brain, right? According to the food, because brain is defined, the intelligence is defined by food. We can see this. So our ancestors ate mushrooms, and then we have that quality of the mushroom brain inside us,
What quality is that?
That is very ancient brain, very not intelligent as the modern man's brain. The modern man is more intelligent than the ancient man.
Some people think that mushrooms are, the root system.
They are. All
planet.
plants are that. All trees are all there. They have the communication, inside the earth.
What
They
is that, the
communicate with the
mycelium or
roots,
something?
everything.
Right.
But what I'm talking about, the ancient, So that is why if we eat mushrooms and ferns, a lot of it, then our level of intelligence goes down. It goes back to the ancient period.
The
time.
Neanderthals?
Yes. So that is because of the food, but that connection I'm just talking about, it is still inside us, because it has been passed down. The DNA, the blood that we have, each one of us, is the most ancient blood that we all carry.
Right.
Right? It's not something new, the DNA. So you see. Yeah, so talking about Gorakhpa and Gorakhnath, right? Honored by two traditions in their own ways in theology, according to their own theology and philosophy, and how they have followed him through the years. And still today we have large followers of Gorakhnath in India, and many mats and ashrams are also
Well,
there.
the Nath Sampradaya is sort of the largest sampradaya of all sadhu.
Yes, it is.
Mats,
It is one of the biggest sampradaya among the other sadhu sampradayas in India itself. It has developed like that, but it has broken up, into many different families, and then the systems also has been forgotten because people are still going more outward.
I mean, did you talk about how the, Brahmanism and maybe Shankaracharya sort of co-opted Gorakhnath?
Yeah, obviously, there was this influence also, because because once the Brahmins, that is especially Sankaracharya, the Adi Sankaracharya, who formed a huge army of Brahmins and took over most of the Buddhist shrines and Buddhist monasteries during that time, right, in India.
Well, he even came to Nepal.
Yes, he did. He came to Nepal, he came to Pashupatinath, and
He
that's...
converted it to Shiva's place.
Yes, it was Avalokiteshvara's place.
Yeah.
And the whole place was developed by Charumati, the daughter of Asoka, who was married here with the Buddhists,
Yeah.
Sakya, I think.
We can't go into that story right
Yeah,
now.
no, it's just...
But just in general, how did because I think a lot of people these days really associate Gorakhnath as a Hindu,
Yes.
and that his practices have been, co-opted to fit a certain narrative
Yes.
in India,
Yes.
which is even a bit different than here in
Yes, it is.
Nepal.
You're right. Because what happened now, we are having this knowledge and all these things. Because some great people in the past excavated, like in India, used excavation of all the Buddhist science by this great Englishman, Alexander Cunningham. Right, he has given us this great thing in history. Before that, Buddhism was lost because of this Brahmins, because they destroyed Buddhism,
Yeah.
right? And many Buddhist monks ran away, right? Took shelter, like in Nepal, in the hills, and many went into Tibet, taking with them all
and Sri Lanka and
Yes, Sri Lanka and other places like
Burma,
Burma,
Laos,
Thailand,
Thailand.
Laos. So they all spread
the
all,
diaspora.
right, leaving India blank of
Yeah.
Buddhism at that
Yeah.
time, and people forgot about it as
Yeah.
time passed until Alexander Cunningham comes along and starts building railways, and suddenly he discovers all this monuments, Sanchi, Buddha Gaya, all these places.
He was a civil servant working for the East India
Yes,
Trading Company.
yes, he was in the trading company at that time, working for them.
There was also 600 years of Muslim rule in between 500 years of Buddhism
Yes.
and the
was.
British coming.
Yes, the
to
British,
India.
and before the British, the Muslims.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Right? The
Muslim
Muslims were
rule.
defeated by the British, and the
Yeah.
British took over India.
Yeah.
Right? Before that, 700 years of Muslims were there, and they were,
But then it's true, they excavated the history of Buddhism in India,
yes,
which otherwise might have disappeared entirely.
it would have died away, and we wouldn't have known a lot of things that we know today.
Yeah.
Right? That's why we see the teachings that Gorakhnath practiced and he himself attained enlightenment was through his practice from Vajrayana Buddhism, right? And then Minpa, his Guruji, was another.
Well, I know we're super excited to be hearing about these practices.
Really.
Finally discuss them.
Yeah, maybe we
On
discuss
video.
them more, break them up,
Yeah,
open up more in other videos later on.
exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. Thank you.